The stars shimmered and twisted as massive shapes emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. One by one, the warships of the Kreshtar Dominion materialized like predators stepping into moonlight. There were hundreds of them, each vessel larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their dark hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it, making them look like holes torn in the fabric of space itself. Fleet Commander Jathik stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Triumph, his 4 eyes studying the holographic display before him. The third planet from the yellow star glowed blue and green in the projection. Earth. His mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. This would be conquest number 848. After 3,000 years, the Dominion had perfected the art of subjugation. Around him, his bridge crew worked efficiently at their stations. They had done this so many times before. The routine never changed. Arrive, assess, intimidate, conquer. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw the fleet. Those who resisted were crushed within days. It was always the same. "Commander, initial scans are complete," reported his tactical officer, a young female named Krenal. She touched her control panel and new data flooded the display. The inhabitants call themselves humans. Population approximately 8 billion. Technology level is primitive. They have basic nuclear weapons and chemical propulsion rockets. No faster than light capability. No unified planetary defense system. No energy shields. Jathik's inner eyelids flickered, the Kreshtar equivalent of a smile. Category 5 civilization, then. Are they aware of our presence? Negative, Commander. Their detection systems are too primitive to register us at this range. We could be in orbit before they know we exist. Excellent. Jathik moved closer to the hologram of Earth, studying it carefully. The planet was beautiful in its own way. Most planets were before the Dominion arrived. He pushed that thought aside. Beauty was irrelevant. Only strength mattered. Only the Dominion mattered. What is their political structure? He asked. Krenal consulted her readings. Fragmented, Commander. Over 190 separate nation-states. Constant conflicts among themselves. No central authority. They are divided by language, religion, resources, and ideology. Perfect. Jathik turned to his command staff. Divided opponents are easily conquered. Begin standard approach vector. Have all ships move into strike positions around the planet's orbital plane. Charge weapon systems to 60%. That should be more than sufficient for any resistance they might attempt. The orders rippled through the fleet. Hundreds of warships began their slow, calculated advance toward the inner solar system. They moved in perfect formation, a dark tide rolling toward an unsuspecting world. On Earth, life continued as normal. In Beijing, office workers crowded onto subway trains. In New York, traders shouted across the stock exchange floor. In Mumbai, families sat down for dinner. In London, theater lights dimmed as a play began. In São Paulo, children played soccer in dusty streets. Nobody knew that everything was about to change. At the SETI Institute in California, Dr. Sarah Chen frowned at her computer screen. The Deep Space Array had picked up something unusual. Strange patterns in the cosmic background radiation at the system's edge. She ran the data through analysis programs, but nothing made sense. It was probably just interference from a solar flare. She made a note to check it again tomorrow and went home to her apartment. In orbit, military satellites from various nations began experiencing odd glitches. Camera feeds flickered. Communication channels crackled with static. Technicians scratched their heads and blamed software errors. Nobody suspected the truth. The Kreshtar fleet reached the halfway point to Earth. Jathik allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had been a fleet commander for 200 years. He had seen species of every imaginable form surrender or perish. Some begged. Some fought bravely but futilely. Some simply gave up when they saw the fleet. The humans would be no different. "Commander," Krenal interrupted his thoughts, "we are ready to transmit the ultimatum. Proceed." Krenal's fingers moved across her console. The Dominion's message had been crafted over thousands of years and refined with each conquest. It was simple, direct, and had been translated into every known language. The goal was to make surrender the only logical choice. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1 now. At exactly 0300 UTC, every electronic device on Earth simultaneously hijacked. Television screens went black, then blazed with alien symbols. Radio stations cut to static, then filled with an unknown voice. Smartphones, tablets, computers, even digital billboards. Everything that could display or broadcast suddenly carried the same message. Jothik's image appeared on a billion screens. His four eyes stared out at humanity. His mandibles moved as he spoke, and somehow, miraculously, terrifyingly, everyone heard him in their own language. Inhabitants of Earth, I am Fleet Commander Jothik of the Kreshtar Dominion. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our empire. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is an inevitable fact. Across the planet, people froze. Drivers stopped their cars in the middle of highways. Parents grabbed their children. The elderly clutched their hearts. The young stared in disbelief. You have 48 hours to respond, Jothik continued. Surrender unconditionally, and your species will be preserved as servants of the Dominion. Resist and you will be eliminated. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels. Your divided nations cannot organize effective defense. You cannot hide. You cannot escape. You can only choose whether your species lives or dies. The message provided technical specifications for transmitting Earth's surrender. It would be broadcast on the same frequency using the same hijacked systems. All humanity needed to do was send a simple message. Earth surrenders. You have 48 hours, Jothik repeated. Choose wisely. Choose survival. The transmission ended. Every screen went black. Every radio fell silent. For a long moment, the entire planet seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. In Washington, emergency alerts shrieked. In Moscow, military commanders screamed orders. In every capital city, leaders scrambled into bunkers and emergency command centers. Phones rang endlessly. Internet servers crashed from the traffic. Social media exploded with panic, denial, conspiracy theories, and terror. On the Eternal Triumph, Jothik returned to studying his tactical displays. Ground assault teams were being organized. Occupation governors were being briefed. Resource extraction plans were being finalized. Everything was proceeding according to protocol. How long until we reach optimal strike distance? He asked. 36 hours, Commander, replied his navigation officer. Good. That gives them time to panic, argue among themselves, and realize the futility of resistance. By the time we arrive, they will be ready to surrender. He paused, then added, I estimate 72 hours from first contact to complete control, perhaps less. This species seems particularly fragmented. Krenal glanced at her commander but said nothing. She had noticed something in the human transmissions her sensors had intercepted. Even in their panic, there was something else. Defiance, perhaps, or stubborn pride. She wondered if the humans would actually surrender, but she kept her thoughts to herself. Jothik had never lost a battle in 200 years. The humans would surrender. They always did. The fleet continued its advance. The countdown had begun. In 48 hours, Earth would belong to the Dominion, or so they thought. The United Nations building in New York had never seen anything like this. Every seat in the General Assembly was filled. Diplomats who had spent years barely speaking to each other now huddled together, their previous conflicts suddenly meaningless. On the large screen at the front, Jothik's message played on repeat, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. President Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Coalition stood at the podium. She had been chosen to speak because her small organization had been preparing for this exact scenario for 20 years. Everyone had called them crazy. Now those same people were begging for answers. We have 43 hours remaining, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. We need to make a decision. Do we surrender or do we resist? The chamber erupted in shouting. The delegate from France stood. Resist with what? They said our weapons are useless. Surrender means slavery, shouted the Russian ambassador. My people did not survive wars and revolutions to become servants to aliens. Slavery is better than extinction. Someone else called out, is it? Asked the delegate from India quietly. Her voice cut through the noise. Is it really? The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What kind of life would their children have under alien rule? What would happen to human culture, human dignity, human freedom? In a basement laboratory at MIT, Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically with a team of scientists pulled from every major research institution on Earth. They were trying to analyze the alien transmission, looking for any weakness, any clue about the technology that had hijacked every electronic device on the planet simultaneously. It's incredible, breathed a young programmer from Japan. The signal penetrated every firewall, every security system. It's like they understood our technology better than we do. They probably do, Sarah said grimly. She pulled up another screen. But look at this. The transmission contains more than just the message. There's embedded data, protocols, maybe even fragments of their computer systems. Can we use it? Asked a gray-haired physicist from Germany. Maybe, if we had years to study it. Sarah slumped in her chair. We have less than 2 days. Across the world, people reacted in different ways. Some looted stores convinced the end was near. Others gathered in churches, mosques, temples, and synagogues to pray. Some families barricaded themselves in their homes, but most people simply went about their lives because what else could they do? They went to work. They made dinner. They hugged their children a little tighter. In Colorado, General Marcus Webb stood in a secure military command center, surrounded by top officers from every branch and every nation. On the screens around them, surveillance satellites showed the approaching alien fleet. The ships were massive, moving in perfect formation. Options? Webb asked, though he already knew the answer. We have none, sir, replied an Air Force colonel. We launched our entire nuclear arsenal at them an hour ago in a test strike. Every missile was destroyed before it got within 1,000 kilometers of their ships. They didn't even slow down. Conventional weapons? Useless. Their hulls are made of something our sensors can't even identify. Bullets would bounce off. Missiles explode harmlessly. We might as well throw rocks at them. Webb nodded slowly. He had expected this. Then we need to think differently. If we can't fight them with weapons, how do we fight them? Nobody had an answer. Back at the UN, the debate continued. Some nations had already prepared individual surrender messages, unwilling to wait for global consensus. Others demanded a unified response. Arguments broke out over whether humanity should beg for mercy, negotiate terms, or refuse to respond at all. Then a young woman stood up. She was not a delegate or a politician. She was a translator from the UN staff, barely 25 years old. She should not have even been in the chamber. But in the chaos, normal protocols had collapsed. May I speak? She asked. President Vasquez looked at her in surprise, then nodded. What is your name? Maria Santos. I'm from Brazil, and I have an idea. Please share it, Vasquez said. At this point, they needed any idea they could get. Maria walked to the podium, nervous but determined. They expect us to surrender or fight. What if we do neither? What if we send them something completely different? Like what? Asked the French delegate skeptically. Everything. Our history, our art, our music, our stories, everything that makes us human. The room fell silent. People looked at each other in confusion. I don't understand, said the Chinese ambassador. Maria took a deep breath. They see us as primitives, as obstacles, as nothing important. What if we show them who we really are, not as a military threat but as people, as a civilization worth knowing? That's insane, someone muttered. Maybe, Maria agreed. But what do we have to lose? If we surrender, we lose anyway. If we fight, we die anyway. But if we show them our humanity, maybe, just maybe, we plant a seed of doubt. Dr. Chen's phone rang. It was President Vasquez. 5 minutes later, Sarah and her entire team were on a video call with the UN General Assembly. Can you do it? Vasquez asked. Can you compile everything Maria suggested and transmit it to the alien fleet? Sarah looked at her team. They looked back at her. It was impossible. They had less than 40 hours to gather and organize the entirety of human culture and broadcast it into space. Yes, Sarah said. We can do it. What followed were the most intense 36 hours in human history. Every museum on Earth opened its archives. Every library uploaded its contents. Musicians submitted their compositions. Artists photographed their paintings. Writers shared their stories. Historians compiled records. Scientists contributed their discoveries. But it was more than that. A website went live, translated into every language. Tell the aliens who we are. Within hours, millions of people uploaded personal messages. A mother in Kenya wrote about her love for her children. A soldier in Afghanistan wrote about the brother he lost in war. A child in Norway drew a picture of their family. An elderly man in Vietnam wrote about surviving hardship with hope. Sarah and her team worked without sleep, organizing the flood of data into a coherent transmission. It was too much. They couldn't include everything, but they tried. They included Mozart and rock music, Shakespeare and ancient poetry, the Mona Lisa and street art. scientific papers and philosophical treatises, images of Earth's beauty and documentation of its horrors, wars, genocides, famines. Nothing was hidden. At the heart of the message was a simple statement, translated into what they hoped was the alien language. We are humanity. This is who we are. Judge us fairly. With 2 hours remaining before the deadline, the transmission was ready. But there was one more debate. Should they send it? It might anger them, warned one diplomat. They demanded surrender. This is not surrender. Then let them be angry, said President Vasquez. I would rather die as a human than live as a slave. The vote was taken. It was not unanimous. 23 nations voted against sending the message, preferring to surrender. But the majority agreed. At exactly 0300 UTC, 48 hours after the alien ultimatum, Earth's response began transmitting. It was not a military message. It was not a surrender. It was simply humanity. On the eternal triumph, alarms sounded. Cradle stared at her displays in confusion. Commander, she called out, we're receiving the human response. Good, Jathik said, moving to her station. Display their surrender message, sir. It's not a surrender. I don't know what it is. It's massive. Thousands of terabytes of data. Audio, visual, text in every human language. They're sending us everything. Jathik's mandibles clicked in irritation. Some kind of virus? An attack on our systems? No, sir. I've analyzed it. It's safe. It's just information about them. Ignore it, Jathik ordered. They have refused to surrender. All ships proceed to attack positions. Charge weapons to full. We will commence bombardment in exactly 1 hour. Yes, Commander. But as Cranell prepared to delete the human transmission, curiosity got the better of her. She saved a small portion of it to her personal console. Maybe later after the conquest she would look at it, just to see what the humans had thought was so important. She had no idea that decision would change everything. Cranell sat at her station during the attack countdown, watching the tactical displays. 58 minutes until bombardment. She should have been running final weapons checks. Instead, her fingers moved across her personal console, opening the fragment of human data she had saved. She chose something at random. A category labeled music. She did not know what music was. The Kreshtar had no word for it. She activated the file. Sound flooded her headset. She had expected noise, perhaps some kind of communication code. What she heard made her freeze. It was like nothing she had ever experienced. Notes rose and fell in patterns that seemed to reach inside her chest. A human voice sang words she did not understand, but the emotion behind them was universal. Joy, sorrow, longing, hope. The song ended. Cranell sat motionless for a long moment. Then she played another. And another. She forgot about the countdown. She forgot about everything except the sounds washing over her. She did not notice that several other junior officers had quietly connected to her console, listening through their own headsets. Word spread through the ship's network. Curious crew members began accessing the human transmission. Just a quick look, they told themselves, just to see what the primitives had sent. In the engineering section, a technician named Voresh opened a file labeled Visual Art. Images appeared on his screen. A painting of a woman with a mysterious smile. Another of stars swirling in a night sky. Abstract patterns of color that somehow expressed emotions he could not name. He stared at them, confused. Why would anyone create something with no military purpose? What was the point? But he could not stop looking. In the medical bay, Dr. Rallick found himself reading something called poetry. The words were strange, arranged in unusual patterns. One piece was written by a human female who had died hundreds of years ago. She wrote about hope being like a bird in the soul. Rallick read it 3 times, trying to understand why it made his throat feel tight. Throughout the fleet, the human transmission spread like a virus. Crew members who should have been at their combat stations were instead exploring human culture. They told themselves it was reconnaissance, understanding the enemy. But really they were fascinated. On the bridge, Jathik noticed something wrong. Tactical status report on weapon systems. A long pause. Weapons at 97%, Commander. Why not 100%? Minor delays in several attack squadrons, sir. They're reporting. Technical difficulties. Jathik's eyes narrowed. What kind of difficulties? They don't specify, sir. Jathik activated his communications panel. Squadron 7 report. Why are your weapons not fully charged? The squadron commander's response came slowly. Sir, we've been reviewing the human transmission. We wanted to ensure it contained no hidden threats, and it doesn't, sir. It's just information about their culture. I don't care about their culture, Jathik roared. I care about combat readiness. Charge your weapons immediately. Yes, Commander. But Jathik could see on his displays that weapons charging had slowed across multiple ships. What was happening to his fleet? Cranal finally looked up from her console. The attack countdown showed 32 minutes remaining. She had been listening to human music for almost half an hour. She should report herself for dereliction of duty. Instead, she whispered to the officer next to her. Have you heard their music? He nodded slowly. I've been listening for 20 minutes. I don't understand it. But I can't stop. The Kreshtar used to have music, Cranal said softly, before the Dominion. My grandmother told me stories. We used to create sounds for joy, not just for communication. The other officer looked at her sharply. Such talk was dangerous. The Dominion had eliminated useless cultural practices 5,000 years ago. Art, music, storytelling. These were distractions from the purpose of conquest. Efficient species did not waste resources on unnecessary activities. But as more human files circulated through the fleet, more crew members began remembering. Remembering stories their elders had whispered. Remembering fragments of a past the Dominion tried to erase. A gunner opened a file about human history. He read about wars and violence and cruelty, but he also read about individuals who chose peace, about leaders who forgave enemies, about common people who hid strangers from persecution at risk to themselves. He read about a human male named Gandhi, who defeated an empire with nothing but peaceful resistance. He read about humans who died protecting ideals rather than surrendering their principles. The gunner had fought in 17 conquests. He had killed millions. He told himself it was duty, honor, service to the Dominion. But reading about these humans who chose different paths, he felt something crack inside him. A question he had never allowed himself to ask. What if there was another way? Jathik left his command chair and strode to Cranal's station. What is happening to my fleet? Why are combat readiness reports dropping? Cranal looked up at her commander. In her eyes, Jathik saw something he did not recognize. Doubt. Sir, the human transmission? We've been analyzing it. It's not what we expected. I don't care what it is. Delete it and focus on, Commander, please. Just look at it. 5 minutes. That's all I ask? Jathik almost refused. Almost had Cranal arrested for insubordination. But something in her voice stopped him. She was one of his best officers. She had never questioned orders before. 5 minutes, he growled. Cranal loaded a file. This is from their literature category. It's the diary of a young human female. She wrote it while hiding from humans who wanted to kill her because of her ethnic group. She was eventually captured and killed. She was only 15 years old. Jathik began reading. The girl's words were simple, the observations of a child. But her hope, even in darkness, her belief that people were fundamentally good despite evidence to the contrary, her dreams of a future she would never see. Jathik's hands began to shake. He kept reading. The girl wrote about hearing birds outside her window and imagining freedom. She wrote about her family's love sustaining her. She wrote about wanting to become a journalist someday, to tell important stories. She wrote all of this while knowing she would probably die. When he finished, Jathik stood motionless for a long time. Show me more, he whispered. The 5 minutes became 10, then 20, then an hour. Jathik sat at Cranal's station, absorbing the human transmission. He saw their art, he heard their music. He read their stories. He learned about their wars and their peace treaties, their genocides and their humanitarian efforts, their capacity for both tremendous evil and incredible good. He learned that humans were not united. They fought among themselves constantly. They had different beliefs, different cultures, different dreams, and yet when faced with the Dominion's threat, they had come together. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to send this message. Jathik opened a file labeled Personal Messages. There were millions of them. He chose one at random. It was from an elderly human female, her face wrinkled with age. To whoever receives this, she said in a language the computer translated, I am 83 years old. I have lived through wars. I have buried my husband and one of my children. I have seen terrible things, but I have also seen beautiful things. I have held my grandchildren. I have watched sunrises. I have laughed with friends. Life is hard, but it is precious. She paused, looking directly at the camera. You have decided to destroy us. I don't know why. Maybe you think you're superior. Maybe you need our resources. Maybe you're just following orders. But I want you to know something. We forgive you. We don't hate you. We hope that someday you find whatever you're looking for. We hope you find peace. The transmission ended. Jothik sat staring at the empty screen. His mandibles trembled. For the first time in 200 years, he felt something he thought he had eliminated from his existence. He felt ashamed. Around him, the bridge crew had stopped working. They were all accessing the human transmission now, no longer hiding it. An older warrior read about human soldiers who refused to kill civilians even when ordered. A pilot watched human children playing and laughing. A weapons officer listened to a human symphony that made him want to weep for reasons he did not understand. The attack countdown reached 0. Alarms blared. Across the fleet, ships waited for the order to fire. Jothik's hand hovered over the authorization button. One press and Earth would burn. His duty was clear. The Dominion's orders were absolute. He thought about the young girl who wrote her diary in hiding. He thought about the old woman who offered forgiveness to those who would kill her. He thought about the millions of personal messages, each one a life, a story, a unique perspective. His hand trembled. He pulled it back. Commander? Cranell asked softly. Your orders? Jothik looked at his bridge crew. He saw his own doubt reflected in every face. Stand down, he whispered. The words hung in the air of the bridge like something fragile and dangerous. Several officers turned to stare at Jothik, unsure if they had heard correctly. Commander, the weapons officer asked carefully. Did you say, stand down? You heard me. Power down weapons. Maintain defensive positions only. Chaos erupted. Officers spoke over each other, confused and alarmed. Throughout the Dominion's history, no fleet commander had ever refused to complete a conquest. Not once in 3,000 years. Jothik's communication panel lit up with incoming calls from other ship commanders. He ignored them all. His mind was spinning, trying to understand what he was feeling. The human transmission had opened something inside him, something he thought had died centuries ago. Memory. Conscience. Doubt. Before he could fully process it, his priority channel activated. The image of Supreme Overseer Carthex appeared on the main screen. The Overseer's 4 eyes blazed with cold fury. Fleet Commander Jothik, explain why your weapons are not firing. Explain why Earth still exists. Jothik straightened, meeting his superior's gaze. The situation has changed, Overseer. I request permission to initiate first contact protocols instead of immediate conquest. First contact? Carthex's mandibles spread wide in disbelief. With primitives, have you lost your mind? You will commence bombardment immediately. That is a direct order. Sir, the humans have sent us a transmission. It contains information about their culture, their history, I don't care about their culture. Carthex's voice cut like a blade. You have your orders. Complete the conquest or I will find someone who will. The transmission ended. Jothik stood frozen, torn between a lifetime of obedience and something new growing inside him. Around him, his bridge crew watched in silence. Cranell stepped forward. Commander, may I speak freely? Jothik nodded. The human transmission has spread throughout our fleet. Thousands of crew members have accessed it. Many of them are affected by it. Like us, she paused. Sir, I don't think I can fire on Earth. Not after what I've seen. Not after understanding what we would be destroying. That's treason, the weapons officer said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Cranell asked. Or is it evolution? The humans showed us something we lost 5,000 years ago. They reminded us that we used to be more than conquerors. We used to create. We used to dream. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The tactical display showed movement in the fleet. 3 ships were breaking formation, moving away from Earth. Sir, we're receiving transmissions from Captains Dornak, Velkir, and Shorath, reported the communications officer. They're refusing to participate in the attack. They say they've reviewed the human transmission and cannot destroy a culture so rich and complex. More alarms. 5 more ships breaking formation, then 10. Throughout the massive fleet, captains were making the same impossible choice. Jathik watched his fleet fracture before his eyes. But other ships moved to intercept the deserters, weapons charging. The fleet was splitting into factions, those who had seen the transmission and been changed by it, those who resisted that change, and those who were uncertain caught between duty and conscience. His priority channel activated again. This time Carthex's rage was ice cold. Fleet Commander Jathik, you are hereby relieved of command and marked for execution. An enforcement fleet is en route to your position. ETA 24 hours. They will eliminate any ships contaminated by this human poison, and then they will eliminate Earth. You have failed the Dominion. You will all pay the price. The channel closed. Jathik looked at his crew. They stared back, fear and uncertainty in their eyes. He had led them to this. His moment of weakness had doomed them all. No, not weakness. For the first time in 200 years, Jathik had felt something other than cold duty. The humans had reminded him what it meant to feel. Open a fleet-wide channel, he ordered. All frequencies. When the channel was ready, Jathik began to speak. This is Fleet Commander Jathik to all ships. 24 hours ago, the humans sent us a transmission. Many of you have seen it. Many of you have been changed by it as I have been. He paused, choosing his words carefully. 5,000 years ago, our ancestors were like the humans. We created art, we made music. We told stories. We had culture and diversity and dreams beyond conquest. Then came the military coup that created the Dominion. Everything we were was sacrificed for efficiency and expansion. Across the fleet, hundreds of thousands of crew members listened. The humans reminded us of what we lost, what was stolen from us. And now the Dominion wants to destroy them for it. An enforcement fleet is coming. They will kill anyone who has been contaminated by human culture. They will finish what we refuse to start. Jathik took a deep breath. I will not allow it. I will stand between Earth and the enforcement fleet. Any ship that wishes to join me, move into defensive formation around this planet. Any ship that wishes to return to the Dominion, you are free to go. I will not force anyone to follow me into what may be our last battle. Silence fell across the fleet. On the bridge of the Eternal Triumph, nobody moved. Then one by one, ships began to move. Not away from Earth, but toward it. Defensive positions forming a protective shell around the blue planet. 20 ships, 50, 100. Jathik watched the tactical display with something that might have been hope. Not all ships joined him. 73 vessels broke away, returning toward Dominion space. They would report everything. They would tell the Overseer about the rebellion. But Jathik did not care anymore. On Earth, humans watched the alien fleet through telescopes and satellite feeds. They had seen the weapons charge and then power down. They had seen the fleet split apart. Something impossible was happening, but they did not know what. Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to understand. They're fighting each other, she said in disbelief, watching the scanner readings. Some of them are protecting us. The news spread across Earth in minutes. Hope, fragile and tentative, began to grow. Maybe their message had worked. Maybe they would survive after all. Jathik spent the next hours broadcasting the human transmission across all Dominion frequencies. If his fleet was going to die for this, he would ensure the message spread as far as possible. Maybe other fleets would be infected. Maybe other conquered worlds would find courage to resist. Cranall approached his command chair. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. From Earth. Display it. A human female appeared on screen. President Elena Vasquez. Through the computer's translation, she spoke. Commander Jathik, we don't fully understand what's happening, but we know you've chosen to protect us rather than destroy us. We want you to know. We're grateful, and if you're willing to fight beside us, we'll fight beside you. Jathik felt his mandibles tremble again. Tell her yes. Tell her we stand together. The next 20 hours passed in frantic preparation. Jathik's engineers worked with human scientists, sharing technology. It was against every Dominion protocol, but protocols no longer mattered. Humans helped repair damaged Kreshtar ships. Kreshtar technicians showed humans how to retrofit their satellites with shield generators. It would not be enough. The enforcement fleet was 3 times the size of Jathik's remaining forces. They would all die, but at least they would die for something worth dying for. As the countdown reached its final hour, Jathik opened one last file from the human transmission. It was a piece of music labeled Ode to Joy. He did not know what joy was, not really. The Dominion had no word for it. But as the music filled his bridge, washing over his crew, Jothik thought perhaps he was beginning to understand. Joy was this feeling in his chest, this sense of purpose, this knowledge that he was finally doing something right after 2 centuries of doing wrong. The enforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace. 500 warships, weapons already charged. Jothik looked at his crew, at Cranal, who had started all of this by being curious, at his warriors, who had chosen conscience over orders, at the tactical display showing Earth beautiful and fragile. All ships, he commanded. Hold the line. Protect Earth, no matter what. The battle began. The enforcement fleet came like a hammer of judgment. 500 ships against Jothik's 127. The math was simple. The outcome was inevitable. But Jothik had learned from the humans that sometimes the outcome did not matter as much as the choice. All ships, engage at will. Fight with everything you have, he commanded. The space around Earth erupted in violence. Energy weapons carved through the darkness. Shields flared and collapsed. Ships exploded in silent blooms of fire. Jothik's fleet fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. On Earth, billions watched the battle in the sky. They saw their unlikely defenders dying to protect them. Dr. Sarah Chen worked frantically in her lab, trying to find any way to help. The retrofitted satellites were operational, but the shield generators were weak, barely strong enough to protect themselves. There has to be something we can do, she said, scanning through the Kreshtar technical data they had been given, some way to help them. Her team worked beside her, programmers and physicists who had not slept in 3 days. They were running on caffeine and determination, but they were only human. They could not work miracles, or could they? Wait, said a young engineer named David. Look at this. The Kreshtar power systems operate on a frequency that's almost identical to our microwave transmission arrays. So what if we could boost their shields? Not much, but maybe enough to give them an edge. We've got thousands of transmission towers across the planet. If we synchronize them all, focus them on their ships, it was crazy. It might not work. But Sarah was already pulling up schematics. Do it, contact every facility. Get everyone coordinated. We have maybe 20 minutes before those ships are destroyed. In orbit, the battle was going badly. Jothik's flagship had taken heavy damage. Half his fleet was gone. The enforcement fleet kept coming, relentless and efficient. Supreme Overseer Carthex commanded from his dreadnought, personally overseeing the elimination of the traitors. All ships target the Eternal Triumph, Carthex ordered. I want Jothik's ship destroyed. Make an example of him. A dozen warships focused fire on Jothik's position. His shields began to fail. Alarms screamed. The ship shuddered under the assault. Cranal worked frantically at her station, rerouting power, but it was not enough. Shield failure in 30 seconds, she reported, her voice steady despite her fear. It's been an honor serving with you, Commander. Jothik nodded, accepting his death. At least Earth would survive a few hours longer. At least he had tried. Then something impossible happened. His shields, which had been collapsing, suddenly surged. Power flooded into the defensive systems from an unknown source. The incoming fire, which should have destroyed them, splashed harmlessly against the renewed barriers. What's happening? Jothik demanded. Cranal stared at her instruments in disbelief. Sir, we're receiving power from Earth. They're boosting our shields somehow. I don't understand how, but it's working. Across the fleet, the same thing was happening. Human transmission towers had synchronized, sending focused energy beams to the Kreshtar ships. It was not much, but it was enough to strengthen shields to buy time to keep fighting. Carthex watched in fury as his guaranteed victory became uncertain. What are the humans doing? How is this possible? His tactical officer had no answer. The humans were barely out of their own atmosphere. They should not have been able to affect the battle at all. But somehow they were. Then something else happened. Several ships in the enforcement fleet stopped firing. Confusion spread through their ranks. Jothik realized what was happening and smiled. Open all channels. Broadcast the human transmission to the enforcement fleet. Let them see what we saw. The human message flooded across every frequency. The enforcement fleet tried to block it, but it was too late. Crew members who had been told they were fighting contaminated traitors now saw the truth. They saw the art, the music, the stories. They saw the personal messages. They saw what the Dominion wanted to destroy, and some of them could not do it. A captain in the enforcement fleet named Toresh made a decision that would cost him his life but save thousands of others. He turned his ship around, facing not Earth but his own fleet. This is Captain Toresh. I've seen the human transmission. I understand now what we're being ordered to destroy. I cannot participate. To any ship that feels the same, join me. Toresh's ship fired on the enforcement fleet. He lasted only seconds before being destroyed, but his sacrifice inspired others. 3 ships joined the rebellion. Then 7. Then 20. The enforcement fleet was fracturing just as Jathik's fleet had fractured. The infection was spreading. The idea that there could be more to existence than conquest, that culture and art and joy had value, was more dangerous than any weapon. Karthek saw his fleet falling apart and made a terrible decision. All remaining loyal ships target the Earth directly. Destroy the source of the contamination. 100 ships turned toward the blue planet, weapons charging for planetary bombardment. Nothing could stop them now. Earth's shields were nothing compared to the firepower about to be unleashed. Jathik saw what was happening. There was only one choice. All ships intercept course. Get between them and Earth. Protect the planet with your own hulls if necessary. The remaining rebel ships threw themselves into the path of the bombardment. They took the hits meant for Earth. Ships exploded. Thousands died. But they held the line. Among them was the Eternal Triumph. Jathik's flagship absorbed blast after blast, shields collapsing, armor burning away. The ship was dying. But Earth was still safe behind them. Evacuate the ship, Jathik ordered. Get to the escape pods. Sir, you need to come with us, Cranel insisted. No, someone needs to keep the ship in position. Go. That's an order. Cranel hesitated, then saluted. She and the crew abandoned ship. Jathik sat alone on his bridge, holding his flagship between Earth and destruction. One more hit, just one more hit, and the ship would explode. But maybe it would be enough. The hit came. The Eternal Triumph began to break apart. Jathik activated his escape pod at the last second, ejecting as his ship died. He watched it burn, a sacrifice to protect a world he had come to destroy. The battle ended not with victory but with exhaustion. The enforcement fleet retreated, too damaged and divided to continue. They left behind wreckage and questions. Earth was safe. For now. Jathik's escape pod fell toward Earth, burning through the atmosphere. It crashed in the Pacific Ocean. For a moment he thought he would drown. Then human hands pulled him from the water. A fishing boat, small and fragile, had seen him fall and come to help. The fishermen stared at the alien they had rescued. Jathik stared back, too tired to be afraid. One of them, an old man with weathered skin, handed him a blanket. You saved us, the man said simply. Thank you. 6 months passed. The Earth and the Kreshvar who had rebelled formed an alliance. It was awkward at first, 2 species learning to trust each other. But trust grew. The Kreshvar taught humans about faster-than-light travel, advanced medicine, energy generation. Humans taught the Kreshvar about music, art, joy, all the things they had lost. Jathik recovered from his injuries in a hospital in Geneva. Humans treated him with respect, even gratitude. He could not understand it. He had come to destroy them. Yes, he had changed his mind, but he had still threatened them. They should hate him. Why don't you hate me? He asked Dr. Chen one day when she visited. She smiled. Because you changed. You chose differently. That's all any of us can do, right? Make better choices. The human message continued to spread through Dominion space. Rebellions erupted on 17 conquered worlds. The Dominion was fracturing from within, the seeds of doubt taking root across their empire. Jathik stood before the United Nations, speaking to representatives of Earth. We came to conquer you. We thought you were primitive, insignificant, easy prey. Instead, you showed us what we had forgotten. You showed us our own souls. President Vasquez smiled. So what happens now? Now, Jathik said, we go together. There are 847 conquered worlds still enslaved by the Dominion. They deserve what you gave us, freedom, culture, hope. That's a lot of world, someone observed. Yes, it will take time. But humans taught me something important. Some battles are worth fighting even if they take a lifetime. A year later, a joint fleet prepared to launch, human and Kreshvar ships side by side, heading out to free the first of the conquered worlds. It was a small fleet, not enough to fight the entire Dominion, but it was enough to carry a message. The same message Earth had sent. Jathik stood on the bridge of his new ship, the New Beginning. Cranel served as his first officer. Human advisors worked alongside Kreshvar crew members. It was imperfect, sometimes frustrating, but it worked. Before they launched, Jothic visited a small art museum in Paris. He stood before paintings that made him feel things he still did not have words for. A human child, maybe 7 years old, approached him. "Are you one of the aliens who saved us?" she asked. "Yes. My mom says you used to be bad but became good." Jothic's mandibles clicked softly. "It's more complicated than that. But yes, I suppose that's true." "Why are you crying?" the child asked, seeing moisture in his eyes. Humans had taught him that tears were acceptable, even healing.